King Henry VIII is perhaps one of the most notorious figures in English history, remembered not just for his political reforms and religious upheavals, but also for his tumultuous personal life. His obsession with women, power, and control over his romantic partners has led some historians to suggest he was a sex addict, a man whose reign and reputation were profoundly shaped by his insatiable appetite for relationships and physical intimacy. Henry VIII was born into privilege and power on June 28, 1491, at Greenwich Palace. As the second son of Henry VII, young Henry was initially not destined to rule. This allowed him to enjoy a relatively carefree childhood, immersed in the luxuries of court life. He was athletic, intelligent, and charismatic, qualities that would later make him a heartthrob of European courts. Early accounts of Henry describe him as charming and flirtatious, qualities that, while endearing, hinted at his future obsession with romantic and physical conquests. His education included lessons in chivalry and courtly love, ideals that romanticized the pursuit of women. These early influences shaped Henry's perception of relationships as quests for validation and dominance. The medieval tradition of courtly love emphasized admiration of women, often elevating them to near-divine status. While this ideal might have encouraged respect for women, it also placed them in roles that served male egos. For Henry, this became a justification for pursuing women relentlessly, framing his desires as noble quests. Henry married Catherine of Aragon in 1509, shortly after ascending the throne. The marriage was initially harmonious, but Catherine's inability to provide a male heir became a source of frustration for Henry. Over time, their relationship deteriorated, with Henry increasingly seeking solace in the company of other women. And Boleyn's refusal to become Henry's mistress challenged him in a way no other woman had. Her resistance only intensified his desire, leading to a dramatic series of events culminating in the English Reformation. Henry's obsession with and illustrates a pattern in his relationships. He pursued women who were initially unattainable, only to discard them when they no longer fulfilled his desires. Jane Seymour provided Henry with his only male heir, Edward VI, but she died shortly after childbirth. While her death devastated Henry, it also underscored his view of women as vessels for producing heirs rather than as equals in partnership. Anne of Cleves was chosen for political reasons, but Henry's immediate dissatisfaction with her appearance led to the annulment of their marriage. His rejection of and highlights his preoccupation with physical beauty and his inability to see women beyond their aesthetic appeal. Catherine Howard, a young and vivacious woman, reignited Henry's passions during his later years. However, her alleged infidelities led to her execution, revealing Henry's possessiveness and his ruthless approach to relationships. Catherine Parr outlived Henry, serving as his companion and nurse during his declining years. While their relationship lacked the passion of his earlier unions, it demonstrated Henry's need for control and validation, even in his final days. Henry's most notable mistresses included Bessie Blount, who bore him an illegitimate son, and Mary Boleyn, Anne's sister. These relationships were often conducted openly, reflecting Henry's belief that his desires were above reproach. The Tudor court was rife with rumors of Henry's affairs, with many women vying for his attention. This environment not only fed Henry's ego, but also created a culture of competition and intrigue that often had deadly consequences. Henry's relationships often centered on his need for validation as a man and a monarch. His inability to accept rejection drove his relentless pursuit of women, while his insecurities led him to discard those who failed to meet his expectations. Henry's behavior aligns with traits of narcissistic personality disorder, including a sense of entitlement, a lack of empathy, and a preoccupation with power. His relationships were often less about love and more about dominance and control. Some historians suggest that Henry's libido and mood swings may have been influenced by medical conditions such as syphilis or a traumatic brain injury. These theories offer a compelling lens through which to view his behavior, though they remain speculative. Henry's obsession with securing a male heir led to the English Reformation, a seismic event in religious and political history. His personal desires reshaped England's religious landscape, severing ties with the Catholic Church and establishing the Church of England. Henry's treatment of his wives and mistresses highlights the precarious position of women in Tudor society. His reign serves as a stark reminder of how personal desires can have far-reaching consequences for those caught in their wake. King Henry VIII's legacy is inextricably linked to his relationships. While he is celebrated for his political and cultural achievements, his reputation as a man driven by an insatiable desire for women continues to captivate and intrigue. Whether viewed as a sex addict or a product of his time, Henry's life offers a fascinating glimpse into the intersection of power, desire, and human frailty. King Henry VIII's life and reign have captivated historians, novelists, and the general public for centuries. Beyond his achievements in governance and religious reform, his voracious appetite for women has sparked debates about his personality and possible sex addiction. This extended exploration delves into every facet of his relationships, psychological makeup, and the cultural and political ripples of his actions. The Tudor court was a theater of grand displays, where flirtation and courtly love were not only tolerated but encouraged. Women of the court, particularly those in the Queen's service, were often the objects of the king's attention. This environment allowed Henry to indulge his desires openly, creating a system where access to the king could elevate one's status or lead to ruin. Henry's romantic pursuits often blurred the lines between genuine affection and political maneuvering. For women, becoming Henry's mistress or wife meant both privilege and peril. The rewards included wealth and influence, but rejection or scandal could lead to exile or execution. Courtiers played an active role in facilitating Henry's relationships. Some sought to introduce their daughters or female relatives to Henry, hoping to secure favor or political advantage. Others became pawns in Henry's love life, as seen with the Boleyn family, whose daughters Anne and Mary both became entangled with the king. Henry's most intense obsessions often involved women who resisted him, and Boleyn's refusal to become his mistress set the stage for one of the most dramatic chapters in English history. Her resistance was a challenge to Henry's authority and masculinity, fueling his determination to marry her at any cost. Once Henry's passion was satisfied, his interest often waned. This cycle of infatuation and disillusionment defined his relationships. When his wives failed to produce male heirs, or when their allure faded, they became expendable. And Boleyn and Catherine Howard both paid with their lives, while others, like Catherine of Aragon and Anne of Cleves, faced humiliation and rejection. Henry exhibited traits that align with modern understandings of sex addiction. These include compulsive behavior, a need for control, and an inability to maintain stable relationships. His incessant pursuit of women suggests a deep psychological need that went beyond physical desire. Henry's behavior can also be understood through the lens of narcissism. His need for constant validation from women reflects a fragile ego, likely exacerbated by his role as a monarch. Rejection, whether personal or political, was intolerable to Henry, leading to dramatic and often destructive responses. Several theories suggest that Henry's physical and mental state contributed to his behavior. Syphilis, a common affliction in the Tudor period, has been proposed as a possible explanation. Others suggest that a traumatic brain injury, possibly sustained during a jousting accident in 1536, altered his personality and heightened his impulsive and aggressive tendencies. While Henry's wives are well documented, his mistresses played a significant role in his life. Bessie Blount, the mother of his illegitimate son Henry Fitzroy, was a prominent figure. Mary Boleyn, Anne's sister, is another well-known mistress, though her relationship with Henry is shrouded in mystery. Rumors of Henry's affairs were widespread, though not all are substantiated. Court gossip often exaggerated his exploits, contributing to his reputation as a man of insatiable desire. These stories, whether true or not, shaped public perception of the king as a libertine. Henry's pursuit of Anne Boleyn led to the English Reformation, a seismic shift in religious and political life. His break from the Catholic Church was motivated as much by personal desire as by political necessity, underscoring the far-reaching consequences of his romantic obsessions. Henry's wives and mistresses faced immense pressure to conform to his expectations. Failure to do so often resulted in disgrace, exile, or death. Their experiences highlight the dangers of being drawn into the orbit of a man whose desires knew no bounds. Henry VIII's romantic pursuits were deeply entwined with the political dynamics of the Tudor court. Marriages and affairs were rarely driven solely by passion. They were also calculated moves to secure alliances, strengthen dynastic claims, and consolidate power. For instance, his marriage to Catherine of Aragon aligned England with Spain, while his union with Anne of Cleves was meant to bolster relations with German Protestant states. This strategic intertwining of politics and personal desire highlights how Henry's relationships were not just personal, but a reflection of the volatile political landscape of his time. The Tudor court was a highly theatrical environment, where power and influence were often tied to physical beauty and charm. Women were viewed as ornaments of the court, their worth frequently measured by their ability to catch the king's eye. This culture fostered competition among courtiers to present their daughters, sisters, or wives as potential consorts or mistresses, hoping to gain favor with the monarch. For Henry, this environment provided a steady supply of potential partners, reinforcing his view of women as prizes to be won and discarded. This culture of objectification not only shaped Henry's relationships, but also left a lasting impact on the women caught in his orbit. Henry VIII's behavior can be partially understood through the lens of his psychological state and health challenges. Historians speculate that his compulsive relationships and mood swings might have been exacerbated by underlying medical conditions such as syphilis or diabetes, as well as a traumatic brain injury sustained during a jousting accident in 1536. This injury reportedly led to increased irritability and impulsivity, which may explain his erratic treatment of wives and mistresses. By examining these factors, one gains a more nuanced understanding of Henry's actions, suggesting that his relentless pursuit of women was not merely a reflection of personal choice, but also a consequence of deteriorating physical and mental health. As Henry aged, his physical and emotional health deteriorated. His once athletic frame became bloated, and he suffered from chronic pain, likely due to a leg injury. Despite these challenges, his appetite for women persisted, though his later relationships lacked the intensity of his earlier pursuits. Catherine Parr, Henry's sixth and final wife, served as a stabilizing influence during his later years. Unlike her predecessors, Catherine managed to navigate the complexities of life with Henry, surviving his temper and maintaining her position until his death. Henry's reputation as a sex addict has become part of his enduring myth. While this label may oversimplify his character, it captures the essence of a man whose personal life often overshadowed his political achievements. Henry VIII's early education and exposure to chivalry shaped his perspective on women and relationships. Trained in the ideals of courtly love, which celebrated the pursuit of unattainable women, he adopted a romanticized view of conquest. These teachings glorified admiration and pursuit, but placed women on pedestals, often reducing them to symbols of male validation. For Henry, this cultural norm intertwined love, power, and dominance, forming the foundation of his tumultuous personal life. Moreover, his privileged upbringing provided him with access to luxurious court life, where flirtation and displays of charm were customary. Surrounded by indulgence, Henry's youthful charisma made him a heartthrob among courtiers. However, this also bred a sense of entitlement, setting a precedent for his later relationships. These early influences molded Henry into a man who viewed relationships not as partnerships, but as opportunities for personal gratification and assertion of control. The Tudor court was a stage for power dynamics where alliances, ambitions, and personal desires intertwined. Women at court were often viewed as tools for political maneuvering, their proximity to the king being a marker of their family's influence. This environment amplified Henry's appetite for women, as many families encouraged their daughters or relatives to attract his attention for strategic gains. Courtiers actively facilitated Henry's relationships, creating a culture of competition that fed his ego. His affairs and marriages were often public matters, reflecting both his personal whims and the court's opportunistic nature. This intricate web of power and desire not only allowed Henry to indulge his compulsions, but also normalized a system where women were pawns in the larger game of Tudor politics. Henry VIII exhibited psychological traits that resonate with modern understandings of narcissistic tendencies and compulsive behaviors. His insatiable need for validation often drove his relentless pursuit of women. Rejection was intolerable to Henry, not only as a man, but as a monarch who equated personal victories with political strength. His treatment of wives and mistresses, discarding them when they no longer served his needs, reveals a pattern of emotional detachment and control. Historians also speculate that his behavior was influenced by underlying insecurities, heightened by his role as a ruler. These psychological traits, combined with his political power, created a volatile dynamic where his desires often overshadowed the well-being of those around him. Henry's relentless pursuit of a male heir reshaped England's religious and political landscape. His marriage to Anne Boleyn, for instance, led to the English Reformation, severing ties with the Catholic Church. This monumental shift was driven not by theological convictions, but by Henry's desire for personal satisfaction and dynastic security. The lives of Henry's wives and mistresses often ended in tragedy, highlighting the perils of being entangled with a man whose desires were insatiable. Catherine of Aragon faced public humiliation, and Boleyn and Catherine Howard met their deaths, and Anne of Cleves was rejected based on her appearance. These outcomes underline the precarious position of women in Tudor society, where a king's personal whims could determine their fate. Historians have proposed various medical explanations for Henry VIII's erratic behavior and compulsive relationships. Syphilis, a common ailment of the era, is one theory, though evidence remains inconclusive. Another possibility is a traumatic brain injury sustained during a jousting accident in 1536, which reportedly altered his personality, increasing his impulsivity and aggression. Other theories suggest that diabetes or chronic pain from a leg injury may have contributed to his mood swings and deteriorating mental health. These conditions, compounded by his role as an absolute monarch, may have exacerbated his compulsions, providing a more nuanced understanding of his actions beyond mere personal choice. While Henry VIII's wives are well documented, his mistresses also played significant roles in his life and the court. Bessie Blount, the mother of his illegitimate son Henry Fitzroy, exemplifies the privileges and vulnerabilities of being in the king's favor. Similarly, Mary Boleyn, Anne's sister, had an enigmatic relationship with Henry, rumored but not fully substantiated. The experiences of these women highlight the duality of their positions. They enjoyed temporary power and favor, but remained at the mercy of Henry's unpredictable nature. Their stories, often overshadowed by his wives, provide additional layers to understanding the dynamics of his relationships and the risks associated with being close to the king. King Henry VIII's romantic pursuits left an indelible mark on history, intertwining his personal desires with England's political and religious evolution. His need for control and validation drove decisions that reshaped the nation, from the establishment of the Church of England to the redefinition of royal marriages. King Henry VIII remains one of the most controversial monarchs in history, not only for his political decisions, but also for his turbulent personal life. His relationships with his 6 wives and numerous mistresses highlight a complex individual driven by a mix of desire, power, and insecurity. While many monarchs used marriage as a tool for political alliances, Henry's pursuits were often dictated by personal passions and his obsession with producing a male heir. His relentless need for control was evident in how he discarded women who no longer served his interests. Wives who failed to provide him with sons faced annulments, disgrace, or even execution. Mistresses, while often showered with gifts and attention, were similarly dismissed once their novelty faded. Henry's later years saw his once vibrant persona decline under the weight of chronic illnesses and a deteriorating body. Despite his physical decline, his behavior continued to be marked by impulsiveness, suggesting his desire for validation never waned. The court culture of the Tudor era, rife with intrigue and competition, only amplified Henry's compulsions. Women at court navigated a precarious balance, hoping for royal favor while risking ruin. His legacy underscores the far-reaching consequences of one man's unchecked desires. While his political achievements are celebrated, his legacy as a man consumed by desire continues to intrigue and caution. His life offers a window into the complexities of power, the fragility of human nature, and the far-reaching consequences of personal obsessions. In examining Henry VIII, one uncovers not only the story of a king, but also the enduring impact of his relationships on those who lived in his shadow. Henry's life offers a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and desire. His relationships, marked by passion and tragedy, reflect the complexities of human behavior and the interplay between personal and political motives. King Henry VIII's legacy is inseparable from his relationships. While he remains a pivotal figure in English history, his insatiable appetite for women and the consequences of his desires provide a fascinating lens through which to understand his reign. Whether viewed as a sex addict, a product of his time, or a deeply flawed individual, Henry's life continues to intrigue and captivate. Do you view King Henry VIII as a sex addict? Let us know your thoughts below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more fascinating stories from history you won't want to miss.